This is cool!
The Monsterverse. I've grown up with this franchise since the very beginning, with Godzilla 2014. And to the latest, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. The Monsterverse means a lot to me considering I've been a kaiju fan since I was at the age of 6. My first film that actually introduced me to it all was Invasion of Astro Monster. You know, that one. And you know, of course, the main man himself, Godzilla. I've loved this big lizard boy for so long, and something was just so awesome about him that I couldn't help but join the community of other people who enjoy him. No, not that community. Now, since America has attempted the kaiju genre, most have been good, some not so much, but today I will be ranking the Monsterverse, possibly the most well-known kaiju franchise, and honestly, the best cinematic universe I've ever watched. Yes, I said it. Yeah, I know. What you gonna do about it, huh? Overall, the franchise is in a wonderful state right now, with the latest film being the highest grossing one of the franchise thus far. And before I begin, this ranking is fully based on my opinions, and how I view these films differently. I have a specific criteria when it comes to a kaiju film being handled effectively, because I just want to see it succeed, and I also want to love it. And if you disagree with my opinions, that's totally okay. I actually want to see your opinions down in the comments and see what you think about these movies. Also, I will not be ranking Monarch Legacy and Monsters because I'm only looking at the movies. Although, I may cover it in a separate video in the future, but we'll see. Now, with all that being said, let's dive on in, and let's get into the ranking. See, it's funny because I made a diving joke because Godzilla was diving in the water.
Wow, it's the Empire State Building.
Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire is not that great. Look, I know a lot of people like it, and that's great, I'm glad you love it. But over time, I sat down with myself thinking, there's just so many problems here. From the questionable writing to the very messy plot, the movie just feels like it's jumping from one plot point to another. But honestly, my biggest issue with the movie is that it's just another Kong-centered movie. You might as well call this just Kong: The New Empire and sometimes Godzilla. Now, some people might say, but Kieran, that isn't a bad thing. Kong is just as cool as Godzilla. No, that's not the issue. The issue is that this is a Godzilla and Kong movie. A Godzilla and Kong movie. Not just Kong, but Godzilla 2. Kong is center stage, and actually him being the main focus of the movie here, while Godzilla just gets sprinkled in every now and then, because I guess the writers forgot that this is both a Godzilla and Kong movie. And speaking of, I don't mean to be harsh to the director Adam Wingard, because this man is really talented. I mean, he's made or had involvement with 2 of the VHS movies, maybe even more, I don't know. And clearly Legendary and Warner Bros. Loved what he did with Godzilla vs. Kong, but man, I just don't like how he writes Godzilla's character. One moment he's just a brute the whole movie, and then the other he's not really getting developed as a character. Yes, I said character. In Godzilla King of the Monsters, the director Michael Dougherty wanted to develop Godzilla as a character and not just a monster. I don't know, this movie just made him feel like just only a monster again and not really developed like King of the Monsters did. For example, in Godzilla vs. Kong, he has an interesting plot of him acting strangely and only attacking Apex facilities. In this movie, he wakes up, detects a strange signal, kills Tiamat, who, by the way, was literally just chilling in her home and not even harming anything, and then he kills her for energy that he needs to take on Shimo. Like, what? I get he's an Alpha Titan and all, but there could have been some other way, you know, to take care of everything. And can I talk about Evolved Godzilla for a minute? Like, he doesn't feel any different to his normal form than in the beginning of the film. For example, when he fights Scylla, they collide, and then he throws her into a building. Okay, cool. What does the G-Man do next? This dude steps on one building to propel himself, to then jump up high and power slam her. Pause. Like, this all relates to another issue that I'll talk about in a little bit, but this doesn't make his evolved form feel any different to his normal form, because he can just do the same stuff. Like, I don't know if it's just me, but I wish they used his evolved form just a little bit more. Because, like, he doesn't even transform until, like, a little bit after the halfway mark. And also, I don't know if it's just me, but does this movie just look a little bit worse than the previous films? Like, the VFX is still pretty good, don't get me wrong, but in some shots, it just looks a little weird to me. I don't know if it's like a filter or something, but it just looks noticeably worse than the previous entries. And I'm a sucker for final battles in movies because that's where the movie's been leading up to, the epic showdown between the protagonist and the antagonist. And as much as I love the final battle of this movie, it's just messy as hell. Like, moves are being thrown around everywhere, and it's just super fast-paced, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Fast-paced battles in movies can work, but it just doesn't work here. Alright, enough of me complaining, let's talk about some things that I did like in the movie. Possibly my favorite thing in this entire movie was the introduction of Scar King. Like, this dude is such a badass villain. His personality is terrifying, and his introduction is so goddamn cool. He takes pleasure by slicing open Kong's hand with his whiplash, and he even cackles when he's about to release Shimo. Like, he knows Kong is about to face some shit. The thing I love about this movie and what it does with his character is that they don't make Scar King overly powerful. Kong is able to beat them in their fight, and he uses Shimo at the last minute because he's simply just a sore loser. Another thing that I like in this movie is the opening credits with Kong adjusting to his life in Hollow Earth, featuring the man, Doug. After my man, the Doug, takes away Kong's meal for the day, he hears a roar that's similar to his and he thinks that there's another one of his kind nearby, but it turns out it's by something of what's known as a parrot frog. So how huge are these things compared to humans? And I also liked Godzilla fighting Scylla in Rome. That was pretty cool, for the most part. In this movie, I found Kong's arc to be actually pretty adorable and sad, because he believes that he's the only ape left, and his desperation to find others like him is really cool to see. I mean that in like the nicest way possible, by the way. But as the movie goes on, he will soon come to know that this isn't the case. And as much shit as I gave Godzilla in this movie, I still loved all of his scenes. He was as badass as always, and also Trapper and Bernie are like the best characters of this movie. Overall, Godzilla x Kong the New Empire isn't a bad film at all, not in the slightest. Sure, there are things I didn't like. I still find it kinda dumb that the vehicle can just camouflage to the creature flying next to them, and how Dr. Andrews literally just explains the whole backstory of Scar King and the Great Apes, literally in that room. I still find Kong's Infinity Gauntlet dumb, and I think it's convenient that it has injections in it that will just heal the frostbite right up. Like, how did you know that he was gonna get frostbite? And also, I just don't like how the monsters move like they're in a damn Looney Tunes episode. So, overall, I'm definitely going to make a separate video on why this movie is heavily flawed, and why I just don't vibe with it like I used to. So, in the end, it's a big old 6 out of 10. It's decent, but in my opinion, it's a big step down from its predecessor in a number of ways. Oh yeah, the anti-gravity fight scene was pretty cool too.
You saved me. Why?
Monkey.
Kong Skull Island is really enjoyable. One of the things that people trash on the Monsterverse for is the human characters, and how they really don't get fleshed out or anything. But here, I almost enjoyed like every character. Lieutenant Packard, played by Samuel L. Jackson, gives it his all, and honestly, he's my favorite human villain of the Monsterverse. He's both equally terrifying and menacing, as he wants to kill Kong for killing all of his men. In the end, his efforts doesn't really go that well for him. This movie also has Marvel actors, but honestly, Marlowe is my favorite character out of this bunch. He's been stuck here on the island ever since World War II. Think about that. You've been stuck on an island with all these creatures for that long. That's gotta deteriorate your mind somehow. And damn it, but that scene in the ending credits showing him coming back to his family after all that time was really heartwarming, and honestly, got me a little choked up. Feels like there's something else that I forgot to talk about. I can't really think. Oh yeah, this movie's about Kong! You know, before Legendary started to meat ride him. Easily the best scene in this entire movie was Kong fighting the helicopters one by one. The scene begins with audio just playing, and then it automatically goes silent as a tree is hurtled into the front of the vehicle. After that scene, it cuts to this amazing shot of Kong rising in the sunlight. Oh my god, that's so good. Then it cuts to the absolute horror of these characters after they realize that there's an 104-foot tall monkey just standing in their way. They all start opening fire on Kong, but he takes care of them pretty instantly. Literally every time Kong is on screen, he's used effectively, and the final fight is really good too, with Kong dealing the final blow to the Skull Devil by ripping out its, I think that's its stomach? And the part where Captain Marvel fires a flare into the Skull Devil's eye was also pretty cool. And you know this movie's a 10 out of 10 for turning Kong into frickin' Scorpion for Mortal Kombat. Another thing that people really praise this movie for is how beautiful the shots look. Like, the aerial shots of each part of Skull Island look beautiful. Like this shot right here, I really love how beautiful and excellent this shot is. You know what? I might take a vacation here. Actually, never mind. I like how Kong is treated on the island by the native people, known as the Iwi. Kong is considered king around these parts and their protector. Actually, more like the island's protector. Now, let me transition to my negatives here. Why I originally said it was the weakest was because, in my opinion, it didn't really mesh well with the other Monsterverse movies. Like, yeah, it's all cool and stuff, but not much happens in the middle chunk, and mostly it's just an exploring movie. And I know I said earlier that I like the human characters for the most part, but I honestly wish they got a little bit more backstory on why and who they are, and just getting a little bit more fleshed out. But this is the most fleshed out human characters are ever gonna get in this franchise, so get ready. But aside from those minor negatives, like, the movie is really enjoyable. Kong, the skull crawlers, and just about every monster on this island is so unique and cool looking. Like this bug that's known as the Spore Mantis. Like, that's so awesome looking. The first skullcrawler attack is actually pretty horrifying, and how these creatures just basically grab you with their tongue, paws, and swallow you whole. And the mother longleg scene has got to be the scariest, creepiest, and one of my favorite scenes in the whole Monsterverse. I say that because I have what's known as arachnophobia. Like, imagine you're traversing through the trees and then you realize one of the trees is kind of moving strange. Then you look back to see one of your friends being impaled by the leg of the thing, to then look up to the sky and see that it belongs to a 20-foot tall spider.
What? Oh, hell no! Oh, hell no!
Overall, this movie is really great. I enjoyed it. It has great sequences, it's beautifully shot, and it has a really cool final battle scene. Oh, and that post-credit scene of Godzilla and King Ghidorah gave me massive chills. 7 out of 10, I highly recommend it. Godzilla 2014 is a movie where every time I watch it, it genuinely gets better for me. When I first watched this at 11 years old, I was fascinated by everything, from the empty shots of San Francisco, to the really good airport scene, to the final blow of the female Muto. What I love about this movie is the level of scale, from the humans' POV, the monsters especially. For instance, when the G-Man himself rises up to face the male Muto, the shot is pretty much at ground level the entire time. And what sells it especially is the humans reacting to the monsters. It's not every day that you see a 300-foot tall monster rising up to fight a giant praying mantis. But easily, one of my favorite shots from the entire movie is when Ford and his crew are crossing a bridge. They then have to hide after they hear something coming their way. As the female Muto arrives, she searches, and we get this creepy ass shot of the Muto's face peering right under them. And to me, that is so damn good. And well executed too. It's both creepy and terrifying as you have a really large monster right below you, and you have to stay as quiet as possible. But man, when I tell you that little me had the biggest smile on his face watching this for the first time, and especially the airport scene. A helicopter full of soldiers accidentally ram into Godzilla's dorsal spines. Like, how did you not see him, by the way? The helicopter crashes into the male Muto, roaring in the distance, with everyone freaking out of what's happening around them. The shot then moves over a tiny bit to see a huge foot step down, and everyone just goes silent. The Muto looks over and reacts to what's standing in front of him. The shot slowly pans up, giving us the grand reveal of the king of the monsters himself. Dude, I'm both smiling as I write and edit this. It's too damn good. Director Gareth Edwards really puts the scale to good use, and every single shot of the movie looks so amazing. Easily one of the best and probably most famous shots of the movie, I mean hell, it's the whole promotion material, is the Halo jumping scene, where all the soldiers jump from the cargo plane, their red flares choking up the sky. The eerie music grows as the empty shots from the soldiers dropping down. This first-person shot from Ford is both cool and absolutely terrifying. Imagine yourself falling down and going right past these creatures. What emotions are you feeling in the moment? This movie is all around a hell of a good time, and unlike a lot of people, I actually kinda like the humans here. Brody is a decent lead, and the moments that he has with his wife and son are actually kind of adorable. And the ending scene where he finds his wife and all the debris is actually kinda wholesome. Then we move on to his dad, and honestly, I found his character fun to watch. He's grown bitter and irritable after feeling responsible for his wife's death at the power plant incident. And speaking of, the moment where he loses his wife in the beginning of the film is absolutely devastating. Bryan Cranston's acting here sells it after he just watched his wife die after being forced to close the door. God damn, man, that just sucks. But easily, the best and by far my favorite character of the Monsterverse, besides the G-Man himself, is Dr. Serizawa. The reason why I love his character is his overall relationship with Godzilla and to the universe itself. Instead of doing what most people would do, like finding a way to kill or destroy the Titans, Serizawa admires everything about them and sees the Titans as the forces of nature itself. And his best and most famous line of the movie,
The arrogance of man is thinking nature is in our control, and not the other way around. Let them fight.
oh my god, bro. Absolute chills. Well, that's the Godzilla 2014 review. Feels like something is missing that I'm supposed to be talking about here. God, it's on my mind, guys. I just can't really think of it. Oh yeah, the big guy himself! This is the very debut of Godzilla himself. I mean, no shit, it's the first movie in the Monsterverse, and I absolutely love his design. From his jagged dorsal spines to his very stiff and thick head, I love everything about this guy. From the previously mentioned airport scene to the Golden Gate Bridge destruction, this movie makes you really feel that Godzilla is this massive force in nature that isn't here to harm, but also not to save. One thing I love about this movie, which there's tons of, is the mystery of Godzilla himself, and that whole briefing room scene. In 1954, the first ever nuclear submarine reached the lower depths of the ocean, and because of this, it woke up someone, Godzilla himself. Dr. Graham then explains that all the nuclear tests going on around the time, and that the Americans thought it was the Russians, and the Russians thought it was them doing all those. But it turns out they were trying to kill Godzilla. And come to find out, you were just making him stronger because this guy literally feeds on radiation. Like, this dude bulks on it. I like that later on in the Monsterverse, and including this film if you want, Godzilla is referred to as an anti-hero and not anything else. I know a lot of people don't like that the G-Man is only in this for 10 minutes max. I think that's what it is. But every scene with him is used to perfection, and when he does show up on screen, it makes it feel more rewarding and awesome. For example, the Golden Gate Bridge destruction, and how the scene begins with Godzilla swimming near a bridge, until he stops for some reason. The surrounding people are confused to what's going on, until we see this epic looking shot of his tail rising up, and then eventually his whole body. The sense of scale is excellent here, from the POV of the school bus as Godzilla roars while grabbing onto a piece of the bridge. The reason why I love this scene is how epic and terrifying it is, paired with the kids on the school bus reacting to a 354-foot tall lizard rising from the sea. He then eventually gets annoyed with all the tanks and guns being fired at him, so he just goes through the bridge and dips out into the sea. And dude, I cannot tell you how huge the smile on my face was when I saw his tail finally glowing blue. I went through the film thinking, man, when is he gonna have his atomic breath, or when is it gonna show up? And when it showed up, oh man, I knew it was time. It was the moment that peak cinema arrived. Overall, I could talk about this film all day. From the directing, to the writing, to the excellent and well-scaled shots, this is one of those movies where I'm just a huge fan of. 8 out of 10, I highly recommend it. I love Godzilla vs. Kong. Like, when the trailer came out on January 24th, 2021, like, I was sitting there on my couch, like, thinking, oh my god, these two are finally gonna have the epic showdown of the century. And man, I gotta say, this movie absolutely delivered. This movie was directed by also Adam Wingard, who directed Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. You know, the not so good one. Guys, I'm just kidding. Like, I like The New Empire, just not as much as everything else on this list. Literally everything about this movie I love. From the characters, to the action, to the final battle in Hong Kong. Oh my god, it's all too good. Now, before I get to the real juicy stuff, let me knock out the humans first. This is the introduction of Dr. Eileen Andrews and her adopted daughter Gia, who we will come to know as the last native of Skull Island. I like Dr. Andrews as a character a lot more than I did in The New Empire, because here she's actually the supportive mother figure, to which I'm not saying she is in Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, but listen. As the mother figure, she's trying to help her in this new land, because Gia isn't used to all this. Next up is Dr. Nathan Lin, and he has a pretty cool backstory with his brother. This movie introduces the concept of the Hollow Earth, a vast subterranean ecosystem deep within the Earth's mantle, which is just badass. It's like saying that on its own. The whole concept of the Hollow Earth was actually something that was introduced in Kong Skull Island, and Dr. Lin's brother was lost in an expedition to attempt Hollow Earth. There's a lot more characters, but one that I'd like to touch on is my boy, Bernie. Bernie is a Titan podcaster who reports on why Godzilla has been acting the way he is, and with his attacks in Pensacola, he's got to figure that stuff out. And if I gotta say, the human characters are just alright in this film, but they are enjoyable. And Bernie, obviously, is easily the highlight of the film. One of my favorite jokes of the entire movie is at the end when all hope seems lost in defeating Mechagodzilla, and Bernie says this.
We tried to take down those apex bastards, but I think this is as far as we go, so bottoms up. I was hoping to die with adults, but okay.
I honestly don't know why, but that joke gets a little chuckle out of me every time I watch the movie. Let's move on to the best part of the movie, the kaiju action, to which I love every single bit of it. Godzilla's attack on one of the Apex facilities in Pensacola is so badass, topped with the amazing and heavy Godzilla theme playing in the background. And honestly, I love how in King of the Monsters it was more heroic, but in this one, Godzilla is painted more as a villain, so his theme would obviously be painted more towards the villain dark theme. Seeing Godzilla this mad and driven to take care of whatever is pissing him off is really well done. The opening scene of Kong waking up and doing his daily hygiene check was also really adorable. But then it just turns straight up epic when he grabs a full-on tree, rips the leaves off of it, and then throws it at the sky, busting a hole in the dome that he's in. The scene continues to be badass by leading into the coolest intro credits and honestly one of the best title cards I've ever seen in my life. Like, this is just so awesome! The whole Tasman Sea battle is one of the coolest kaiju fights that I've ever seen in my life. I seriously cannot tell you, when I was in my theater and when I heard Godzilla's roar far away and Gia was feeling the vibrations on the boat, oh, I knew I was in for a treat. The whole sequence of the Tasman Sea is one of my all-time favorite movie battles and favorite Monsterverse scenes. The tension and anxiety you feel for Kong as he's trapped on a boat in Godzilla's domain, by the way. Like, you're thinking to yourself, oh yeah, Kong is Kong then eventually breaks free, and then Godzilla hops on the aircraft carrier, gets punched by Kong, but then Godzilla comes back with an insane right to the face. The camera then does this cool shot where it goes underwater to Godzilla getting hit by various jets flying by. Then the camera flips to the two titans again, and Kong punches Godzilla and pushes him back into the water. Absolutely peak right there. Oh my god, and I'm not even done yet. The Hollow Earth is also a really cool and new environment for Titans to thrive in, and Kong learning about the war between the species and the Godzillas is really well done, without any talking whatsoever. This is a perfect definition of show, but no tell. The viewer is allowed to see Kong's reaction to only him being the last ape alive. You know, at least that's what we thought. Godzilla in this movie is always badass as ever, and you should already know watching this that I'm Team Godzilla. I've always been and always will be. Don't worry, I still love you, Kong. Anyway, Godzilla's scenes are used to absolute perfection, showing what an absolute force he can be when he gets a bit angry. Like I said earlier, Godzilla arriving to Pensacola is really cool, and the moment where he digs a f***ing hole into Hollow Earth with his atomic breath was so damn awesome, man. How is this movie so peak? Oh my god! And the scene where he's had enough of Kong's shit and crawls on all fours, yes, like a damn crocodile, and claws the absolute crap out of Kong's chest, letting you know that he's the king around here. The final battle in Hong Kong between both Godzilla and Kong, and where they fight Mechagodzilla, is epic as hell. The moment where Kong saves Godzilla from getting the Kiss of Death V2 was so awesome to see. And the moment when I saw Godzilla stopping Mechagodzilla from taking a hit on Kong, oh my god, I jumped out of my seat. I couldn't, all I could do was just clap up. Like, it's so damn good, I can't. And like, Mechagodzilla is a really good choice for the villain of this movie. I mean, the human villain is Walter Simmons, but obviously the main big boy villain is Mechagodzilla. And he's one of Godzilla's main enemies besides Ghidorah, which this movie's version of Mecha G is technically Ghidorah. It's Kevin's severed head from King of the Monsters. Seeing two of the biggest movie icons of all time teaming up to take down one of Godzilla's most powerful foes is so freaking awesome, man. Yeah, have you guys been able to tell I love this movie? Although for the many things I love about Godzilla vs. Kong, there are some gripes I have with it, and don't worry, they're very minor. Like, I wish I had more Godzilla and Kong fighting. Like, there's only really two main fights between them. Don't get me wrong, all the fights that we have between them are excellent, well used, but I just wish we had a little bit more of it. And this movie is also just like an expedition movie, but, you know, it's actually done better than Skull Island. And as much as I love Godzilla in this movie, what Adam Wingard does for him may seem understandable, and he's painted as the bad guy amongst the whole world, even though he's just being provoked by Mechagodzilla, but then again, I don't mind. He's just pissed because he detects something that may potentially pose a threat to him or the world, so he's got to stop it. I mean, he is the Alpha Titan after all. And the world thinking and painting him as no longer the king of the monsters or humanity's savior, like if people were to actually look into why he's acting the way he is, the suspicion of him only attacking Apex facilities should really make you think of something. It's not like you're gonna sit down and have a personal talk with him about his feelings, like let him express himself. Overall, I love this film so much. From the action to even more action, I was locked in my seat in the theater the whole time, with my Milk Duds, Playmates Godzilla vs. Kong Godzilla figure, and Dasani water in hand. 8 out of 10, go watch it, you'll have a blast. Trust me.
Woo! Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo!
I knew from the start that there was no competition in terms of what my favorite Monsterverse film is. Because Godzilla King of the Monsters is everything that I want in a film, let alone a kaiju film. Great emotional beats, the beautiful cinematography, and easily some of the best action sequences I've ever seen in a movie, period. Now, I know a lot of people don't like this film, and you know what? The haters. Nah, I'm just kidding, but if you're not a fan of this movie, I can see why. The humans may not seem that interesting, the humor can get a bit annoying and cringe at some points, and how the camera cuts away from the Titans fighting at, like, the best moments. But me personally, I don't mind any of that. I enjoyed almost every single human, even Bradley Whitford's character. I laughed at quite a bit of his jokes. I love the Russell family and how their trauma extends all the way back to the San Francisco attacks in 2014. They're scarred for life after they lost their son in the chaos. And the beginning of the film when Emma looks up to see Godzilla walking by, to then her sitting on her bed, going from the intense orange to the depressing blue, shadowing all over her room. Man, that's just heartbreaking. This movie takes place 5 years after Godzilla duked it out with the Mutos, and I love the world's reaction to it. Some people support and praise Godzilla for saving the world almost, and some don't by doing protests, pleading for the extinction of the Titans, which, like, how are you gonna do that? Moving on real quick to Dr. Serizawa, I briefly talked about him in Godzilla 2014, or maybe a lot, I can't remember, and his whole character arc, because this film is the reason why I love his character so damn much. And it leads into one of the many beautiful sequences in this movie. In the courtroom, Monarch is pleading that the Titans are here to bring balance and justice to the world and not to destroy it. After the judge asks why the Titans should be killed off, Serizawa explains that that would be a huge mistake, and the reason for the Titans being there is because of us. Ever since Godzilla 2014, Serizawa has always admired these creatures, especially Godzilla. He believes that Godzilla is the key to bringing balance to the world, which leads to one of my favorite scenes in the whole franchise, which there are many from this film. The scene begins with Serizawa taking a submarine to the very bottom of the ocean, eventually taking him to an ancient temple or society of some sorts, where Godzilla is laying down recovering from the blast of the oxygen destroyer. Serizawa slowly approaches Godzilla with the smoke revealing just how huge he is. Serizawa sets down the nuclear warhead and begins the timer until it detonates. He reaches out and puts his hand on Godzilla, then saying in Japanese,
"살아봐. 정말."
Serizawa then sacrifices himself with the warhead detonating, the music intensifying as the blast reaches the other group's submarine, pushing it up to the surface. Everyone looks around for possible signs of Godzilla, until the famous Goji theme plays as he rises up and then blasts his atomic breath into the sky. Damn it, dude, this movie is just absolutely stunning, and Brad McCreary's score is the best of the entire franchise. The dude is insanely talented, along with everyone who worked on this movie. Moving on to the action, which is easily my favorite that it's ever been in the franchise. Like, every single Titan fight scene makes my inner fan just smile widely. The moment when Ghidorah is about to kill everyone inside the vehicle in Antarctica, they get a signal that something is coming their way. The music slowly starts building up until the epic Godzilla theme plays as he rises up from the ice. This leads into my favorite still of the movie ever, with Godzilla facing off with his ultimate rival, the one who is many, King Ghidorah. Ghidorah is easily my favorite villain of the Monsterverse. His sheer power and size alone is absolutely horrifying. The way in which the world is slowly but surely being destroyed by his storms is absolutely incredible and menacing at the same time. But the worst part is when Godzilla fights him in the water, in his own turf by the way. The oxygen destroyer is then fired into the ocean, supposedly killing them both. Silence is amongst everyone and everything, as fish slowly rise from the ocean, dead in high numbers. But just then, Ghidorah comes flying out, screeching and wailing as it flies away. We then follow it as it lands on top of the volcano that Rodan once slept in, growing back its head that's known as Kevin, and then letting out what is known as the Alpha Call. This call awakens the rest of the Titans around the world, dormant, with Ghidorah ordering them to cause chaos everywhere they go. Yeah, Ghidorah is a really good villain, and easily my favorite of the franchise thus far. He's the perfect definition of an unstoppable force, and that's what makes Ghidorah work so well in his presence. The movie really wants us to feel scared or worried every time Ghidorah appears, and I think it succeeds at that. Another thing that this movie does so well is explaining that Ghidorah isn't from this planet, which poses the question, where is this thing from? When Ghidorah becomes the quote alpha, Dr. Chen explains that he isn't a part of the natural order, which is just so cool, man. I love the idea that Ghidorah is this alien that just came from outer space, meanwhile all the other Titans are from this planet in some shape or form. Alright, it's time to talk about my favorite scene of this entire movie, and possibly all of the Monsterverse thus far, because I remember watching this when I was at least, how old was I in 2019? Okay, we do the math right here. Aha, I was 12. The scene begins with Madison at Fenway Park. The storm starts coming, and eventually heavy rainfall accompanies the surrounding area. After moments of silence, Ghidorah finally makes landfall, and we get a close-up of the creature, with the shot ending on it roaring, which, by the way, Ghidorah's roar is so damn cool. With Ghidorah looking for the Orca, a device that can replicate bioacoustics from other titans, Madison quickly tries to unplug it, but it's a little too late as one of the heads sees her inside the building. Ghidorah immediately begins firing its gravity beams, and somehow Madison does not die once from this attack. She then makes it outside and decides to throw the Orca right in front of Ghidorah, to which he just stomps on it. But he isn't really done with her yet, and as Ghidorah is about to kill her, Godzilla's atomic breath hits Ghidorah's chest, sending him flying to the ground. Madison then looks as Godzilla roars in the skyline, with Monarch and army vehicles following right beside him. This moment right here is easily my favorite scene of the entire Monsterverse and one of my favorite movie scenes of all time. Seeing how the world looked at Godzilla in the beginning of the movie to now where they're fighting alongside him is just super badass, man. But it just gets better from here. As the crew makes a plan to find Madison and get the Orca, one of the pilots says that all the squadrons are locked on target. Then Dr. Chen makes the most badass line of the movie.
Colonel, all squadrons are locked on target.
The iconic Godzilla theme goes into hyperdrive as missiles are launched at Ghidorah. This was me watching this for the first time. I am not joking. I fucking love this movie. And to you, dear viewer, I ask, how are you not jumping out of your seat at this moment? Eventually, Godzilla and Ghidorah charge at each other and their final battle begins, eventually ending with burning Godzilla killing Ghidorah once and for all. Everyone then looks to see all the other titans that Ghidorah summoned now surrounding Godzilla, but then he looks at them one by one, telling them to submit, and also, one by one, they all bow down. I know a lot of people don't like the word alpha associated with Godzilla, but for me, I think it's super cool, and now he owns the true title of King of the Monsters. This movie's so fucking amazing, I can't! The whole Boston fight is easily my favorite fight scene in any movie. I'm sorry, I know there's a lot of good fight scenes in movies out there, but it's just too damn good, man. I still get pumped up and excited every time I hear the theme, or Godzilla and Ghidorah just charging at each other. There's a lot of other stuff I can talk about, like the whole Rodan coming out of the volcano scenes is one of my favorite action sequences I've ever seen in my life. Paired with the freaking death roll that he does at the end with all the jets around him. Ah, it's so good! I am so sorry to headphone users. Pretty much everything in this film that I didn't mention is amazing, and it's well worth your time. If you can get by the pretty decent human plotline, then you got one damn good movie to sit back and chill and watch at home. I plan to make a separate video on this movie as well, just like with The New Empire, because what I said here isn't enough to articulate my feelings for this film. It's the perfect Godzilla movie in every way, shape, or form, in my opinion. So, overall, this movie is absolutely peak, and it's my favorite movie in the Monsterverse, and I'm gonna say it, it's my favorite movie of all time. 10 out of 10. Easily my favorite Monsterverse movie of all time, if I haven't made that clear already. In conclusion, the Monsterverse is easily the best cinematic universe as of now, with all the films so far being really successful, and with The New Empire being the 7th highest grossing movie of 2024, it is no secret that the next film is being eyed for spring 2027, which is also when Sonic 4 releases. Oh boy, I am ready for the memes that will be made there. We had Barbenheimer, so what are we gonna call these two? Soniczilla? Boom, there you go, I just made history. In all seriousness, I love this franchise so much, and I'm so excited to see where it heads next. Thank you for watching, I'll see you in the next one.